What's going on YouTube? Salos, back with another video. Still sober today, doing pretty good. Today's video is going to be a bit personal, you could say. If you don't like that type of thing, you don't have to watch it. I'm still going to be showing music and shit, of course. But this year, it's been a lot of growth for me, getting sober. 6 years with my wonderful girlfriend. But this year has also been a lot of loss. Just recently we lost Martin Aragain from a heart attack, which I'm not going to talk too deeply into that. You guys already know, but Celtic Frost is one of my favorite bands. And I lost one of my best friends this year to drug abuse, and I lost my father as well. I just haven't been speaking to my dad. He's deep into his addiction, and there's really nothing I can do except for better myself. But there have been a few individuals throughout my life who's played a big influential part, you could say, on where my musical taste has gone, and pretty much the majority of the bands that I'm into. And my dad is no exception. So this first part of this video, I'm just going to be showing albums I might have shown before, I might have not, but I'm just going to name them. And then the second batch of releases, I'm going to be talking in depth and going through each release. So I just want to show you guys how big of an influence that my father has played into the music that I listen to. If you guys are curious what we are listening to, we are listening to Baphomet, Children of Doom. This is an alternate mix. This is a mix that my dad did a few years later. This is his black metal band from 1986. And I actually really enjoy it, not only because he's my father, but I think if he didn't get all fucked up in the 80s and the band didn't fall apart, that they could have released some really good music. It's kind of like the Bobby Liebling effect, you could say. Is when individuals are so far out there fucked up that nothing gets done, you could say, but they're really good. I have a song up on my channel. You can check that out. I'm gonna be uploading the full mini LP and then the alternative mix. So just stay forward to that. But first thing, I'm gonna just get into some of the music that my dad has played. So he's played this band Baphomet, and I'm actually gonna do a CD release of that. He's also played in this band Truce, which is okay, like thrash shit. And he also played in the solo project Misery Inc. This is like a Salt Lake City music compilation. Got Misery Inc. on here. So I'm not sure if any of that's on YouTube. It was released through Slaughterhouse Records, which I'm sure some of you are aware of. It's a local label. I believe JR, the guy who runs this label, also played in Baphomet. He played guitars on this release. But this is a compilation of all their bands. They have like some death metal and black metal shit. And my dad's solo project right there. And those of you who might not know, Slaughterhouse also released the Winterlore albums, the first one and the second one. Definitely really good black metal shit. So just the first, let me get into this first batch. So I've talked extensively about Celtic Frost. Celtic Frost is one of my favorite bands. It was one of the first bands my dad turned me on to. He has a big tattoo, the Giger artwork, the Satan one. So Celtic Frost, and you have G.I.S.M. I would have never got into Japanese hardcore if it wasn't for his influence on me. This is probably my favorite album from Japan. And then Amebix, the first two. First EP, then Arise. Definitely fucking classics. These are like, next to Bathory, these are my favorite bands. I'm going to try and go through these ones a little quickly. So you got Gas Tank, Just more Japanese shit. Voivod. So I'm guessing I would have got into the majority of these bands, but I wouldn't have got into most of these bands if it wasn't for his influence on me. Like I said, I would have probably got into him eventually, but not so early. And then you got Rudimentary Peni, fucking weird classic shit. Necronomicon, underrated first wave black metal. Samel, everybody knows Samel. Good Switzerland shit. And then you got Carnivore. Fuck, it took me a long time to get into these guys, but I really fucking love these guys. And then some other thing the last release is Poison Idea. And then a few non-metal things that are kind of related to metal. He also got me into the series Alien. This is like a Blu-ray box set of all the movies. He also got me into H.R. Geiger when I was younger and did a lot of artwork. He turned me onto this, and probably my favorite artist of all time. He also got me into Alex Gray. So these two guys are my favorite artists. So not only has he played a big role in influencing me musically, but artistically as well. So now we're going to get into the other releases. So this is a G.I.S.M. I've mentioned them. I've talked about them in multiple videos. So this is a little like homemade box thing. And I'm not sure if I showed these in a previous video. I don't believe I have. So this is G.I.S.M's album from the Dead Song from 1985. You can see that right there. This is probably the rawest, you could say, and less new wave British heavy metal influence G.I.S.M ever got. Definitely a heavy Japanese hardcore feeling on this. Not unlike Under the Sun, which is more heavy metal influenced. So you got the OBI. I also have a pick in here somewhere. A little G.I.S.M pick. And then the booklet. Got some stickers in here. Then like a lyric sheet. It's all in Japanese. I'm not going to fold it. Pretty cool shit. G.I.S.M is an amazing band. Now this is one I'm definitely sure of. I've never showed before. This is G.I.S.M the early years. This is like the early singles. So this is like a compilation of 7 inches and shit like that. You got the cover. You got the OBI strip. You got the dudes in the band. Then you also have the booklet. So I try to get a good variation of shit. So CDs, this just unfolds like this. Mostly in Japanese. I think all the lyrics are in Japanese, actually. Now I'm gonna say this about a lot of these bands, but one of my favorite bands of all time. Well, it's kind of arrogant to have so many, but I dearly appreciate every single one of these releases. Next up, would be on if I ever did a top 10 list of all-time favorite albums, this would have to be on there. Now, I understand this is not for everybody. If you guys are a fan of Carnivore, you might be able to get into this. This is Typo Negative with Bloody Kisses. Now, I believe this came out in 1993 on Roadrunner. Very gothic and doomy. When I first heard this thing, I fucking hated it. I never understood why anybody would like this. But that was around the time when I was getting into the second wave of black metal and listening to Darkthrone and shit like that, and I was so immersed in all this other music that when I finally came back to this really just hit the spot. And I won't just put this on once, I'll listen to this like 3 or 4 times. This will be like an album of the day type thing. Like the Triptychon releases. Is I'll just listen to this thing the entire fucking day. Extremely dark, cool lyrics. Like I said, it's not for everybody. I might consider this a guilty pleasure, but I might not as well. I really appreciate this band. I still need to get the first press of this. This is a 2013 repress, and the thing about this is this repress goes for over $130, which just fucking blows my mind. But I was, like I said, I was lucky enough to get it at a local record store. Fucking amazing album, really bleak. At a gatefold. Back. Fucking Peter Steele. And if you guys don't know Carnivore, I assume you guys do if you watch Ground Zero Salem channel. I am sure you know because that is his intro. So I have a bunch of shit in this. Let me just go through the vinyl first. So the inserts, cool picture, got some lyrics, and then the labels are the same. Actually, I think they might be different. Second one, I really dig this picture right here. Definitely very sorrow-filled release. Bleak and doomy. This is probably one of the maybe not the saddest record I own, but one of them. So I also have this as well. So this is from their Life is Killing Me. Like a poster type thing. It's like perforated. Don't have that on vinyl. Definitely need to get that. And I also have some goodies in here. So this is an album I bought from my father. And when in the last few months when he got heavy into drugs again, he gave me this to hold on to, and he put a bunch of goodies in this to me. So I have his ticket from 1994. Went to go see Typo. His support guest pass. I believe this came with the release. A photo of the band. And this is a cutout from a magazine. You got like Iggy being all buff and shit on the other side. And then, whoops, you have my dad was in correspondence with Peter Steele in the 90s, and a letter from Peter Steele with a photo. Actually signed the photo. in the letter. So, I've really grown to appreciate this album. It's a fucking masterpiece. If you don't know it, check it out, Typo. It's not for everybody, but if it's for you, it's definitely for you. Next up, oh man, I grabbed just a bunch of fucking classics. Band I have not talked about before. A band that's extreme. Every single one of these bands are hard for me to classify in just one fucking thing. They're all dynamic and like three-dimensional, you could say. But this one especially, this is a Dead Can Dance with Anastasis. This came out in 2006. Electronic group from the 1980s. Two-man band, lady from Australia and a guy from the UK. Fucking masterful. Just a beautiful release altogether. Very dark, atmospheric. If you're into like post-rock or anything like that, I think you can grow to appreciate this. Or even if you like shit like The Knife or Fever Ray or Druna, this is not the kind of folky, atmospheric, dark, like dark classical world music. This, me and my dad say that this is a desert island album, or just when you're, because I live in Utah and you're cruising through like Yellowstone or southern Utah with all the canyons, and just it fits the mood so perfectly. And you got all the dead sunflowers on the cover. God. I wish I could say more about this. It's just so hard to sort of confine it into words, if that makes sense. This came on a double LP set. This is on clear vinyl, like a muddy clear, and then the second one, the labels are just different colors. So. But I can't stress out what this album is. It's fucking awesome. Dead Can Dance, Anastasis. If you like post-rock, fucking give that shit a shot, man. Next up, another underrated electronic group. This came out in 1993. This is Scorn with White Iris Blind. If you don't know Scorn, it's a side project of Mick Harris and Nicholas Bowen from Napalm Death. You could sort of categorize this into industrial electronic music, but it's pretty atmospheric, cool ambience. You got the back. Got this, fuck, I forget. This was like a discount CD. The credits, and there's like photos in this booklet. Fucking really cool shit. I'm going to be talking about this next band in an upcoming video, so I'm not going to talk about it too much so I don't make myself redundant. But Scorn, if you're a fan of Mick Harris, definitely check this out. Oh, this is a weird release. This is a really weird release. This is a Mystical Chance with, I think it's their self-titled from 1994. If I had to classify this, I would compare it to, if you guys have played Halo, like the Halo music, there are no instruments on this at all. It's like cosmic choir chanty shit. It's very, has cool atmosphere to it. This is an album I listen to a lot when I'm trying to go to sleep. And this is one that always does the trick. Especially because I have a hard time sleeping. I have all these fucking crazy nightmares and shit. And this seems to help. Check that shit out. Like I said, all of these are hard to classify. And I don't know how to fucking describe the Meatmen, other than saying it's the fucking Meatmen. This is their second release, War of the Superbikes. Very fun, tongue-in-cheek. You could say crossover, like metal, hardcore 1980s crossover. But that is just doing it to shame. This sounds like nothing like Corrosion to Conformity or Cryptic Slaughter or DRI. This is extremely fun. It's kind of funny at some points. This is a Homestead Records release from 1986. 1985. If you haven't heard the Meatmen either, do yourself a favor. These guys have kind of been lost through time, I would say. All the old metal dudes know who the Meatmen are. It's not a band that gets really mentioned a lot, because they're not like the most influential bunch, but they are killer fucking band. Everything I've heard by the Meatmen is just absolutely classic. There's always 2 or 3 songs that just give you goosebumps. Even though it's completely ridiculous at the same time, it's just like, this shit is fucking awesome. Then you have their third album from 1986. This is Rock and Roll Juggernaut. This was the first one I heard. This was actually a blind buy. My dad recommended to me from a local record store. I believe every single one of these were bought out in the wild, so to speak. So the Meatmen, Rock and Roll Juggernaut. Do yourself a favor and listen to Turbo Rock or Centurion's Rome. Just every song is completely different from the next. There's even like a weird 1920s like Russian song. Just look at that band photo. Look at this one. He's wearing like a fucking tutu. And you got a dildo in the mouth. The fucking Meatmen. I love it. When you're in a good mood, this will keep you in a good mood. When you're in a bad mood, this might be able to cheer you up. Fucking love this band. Another band. This is Killdozer with, I forget the name of this. Intellectuals are the shoeshine boys of the ruling elite. It's a long title. It's like the Inquisition title of the hardcore scene. If I had to sort of compare these guys to some bands, I would say like Rudimentary Peanut. They're just aesthetic-wise, like the Dementors or G.I.S.M, some shit like that. Really don't know what to say about this band either. Another fun band, definitely very political, you could say. I put this in front of Poison Idea to show this today. And definitely a band I've been obsessing about as of late. Have a bunch of their releases. You got side of pork and side of beef. Side pork and side beef. This one was released in sometime in the 1980s. This is their second album, so yeah. So I'm not being very descriptive today, because I'm sure a lot of these I'm planning on doing like a classic sort of like some of my favorite albums, just reviewing them. And every single one of these are all on that list that I will review eventually. I'll most likely be doing one of those this week, so that's why I'm just sort of talking about these in passing. Next up, as I mentioned Celtic Frost in the beginning, I slacked onto getting into Triptychon when their first album came out in 2010. I was really a big fan of Monotheist. My personal favorite would be To Make Ethereum, and a lot of people think that that is their most renowned album. But I would say Morbid Tales is. I think overall Morbid Tales is more loved than any other release that Tom G. Warrior has done. Which that is a classic album or EP. But a band that I kind of love more than Celtic Frost now would be Triptychon. This is up there with Celtic Frost's Monotheist album. All the elements of Celtic Frost are there, but it's more dynamic. I would even choose to say maybe more dark. Tom says that this is closer to Hellhammer than what Celtic Frost was, but you can take it as he says it. Atmospheric, my favorite stuff on all the Triptychon releases are the slow atmospheric with the female vocals. This is another one of those albums that is dimensional. There's layers and layers and layers to this thing that you can just peel apart, from the artwork to the music. Both of the Triptychon albums are complete modern classics in my mind, and just like all the Celtic Frost stuff are. But I can't think of another modern day band that adds that layer of dimension into their music. Like, there was a lot of bands in the 1980s who did that. Prime example I mentioned earlier would be like Amebix's Arise. Like, just the ambience around the whole album, just... That doesn't mean I don't like modern bands today. Today is one of the golden eras for music, in my personal opinion. But I feel like bands don't go the extra mile to create a whole mythos behind a release. But this is the first press from 2010. This is the same as the 2016 releases. This used to be really difficult to come by and pretty expensive. I need to get a new copy since the price has gone down since re-release, which is nice that people have more access to this thing, and I'm able to get one without crushed corners. So don't be surprised if you see another one of these and you have inserts. And I'm sure everybody has these. So. And I believe the only difference between the labels are the same from the first press to the second press. So I'm not going to mention that. I think the only difference is the spines on the first press. You don't have the Century Media label down here at the bottom on the spine. But everything else is exactly the same. Everything else is exactly the same. So it's definitely one of my favorite albums, just like the rest of these. But this is probably my next most anticipated album. Their third release that should be hopefully coming out soon. Tom G. Warrior writes music like George R. R. Martin writes books. It's ready when it's ready, and when it's ready, it's fucking a complete masterpiece. And yeah, definitely an album I'm still digesting today. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. You guys can like, subscribe. If you guys don't like it, you guys can dislike, unsubscribe. I don't give a fuck. But thank you guys for watching my video. I think it would be cool. You guys could mention down in the comments, like, if you had a really good friend who turned you on to some cool bands, or like a dad like I did, or even a friend or a cousin or anything that turned you on to music that changed your life forever. So, alrighty guys, peace.